I'll see myself.
Hey.
Hi, good evening, and welcome to everybody joining us here tonight. So whether you join us in the evening, the night, or in the morning, depending on which part of the world that you join us, we really want to thank you for taking the time to join us tonight to have this very candid and real conversation about life after loss, pregnancy loss, and infant loss. If you're now tuning in, take the time to share with friends, share with family. It is not just for persons who may have experienced loss, but it is for everybody because we as people also need to know how to respond to others who may have gone through this. So just take the time, just take 1 minute and just share this broadcast on your feed, share this broadcast with other persons as we delve into this very important topic here tonight. And so, with me tonight, we have a very great panel with us of persons who um, very willing and open to really share of their experiences and for us to get real about the conversation about dealing with these types of losses and challenges that some may deal with. So tonight with me, I have Warrell and Nakisha Service. They join us all the way from Texas. Of course, there's a Trinity and a Jamaican connection in there as well. We also have with us Nicole Lewis, who is a trauma counselor. So we want to thank her for joining as well. And we have Garnet and Tanessa Lawrence, who are joining us across the waters, but not so far from Tobago. Our sister Isle of Tobago, they're joining us, and Garnet will be coming in shortly. So again, why are we having this conversation? It is important for us, just not just as a church, but as people, to have these conversations. You see, many people deal with this type of loss, and sometimes as people, we sometimes we don't know what to do, and sometimes we may not say the best things, and we're not too sure what people may have dealt with and what it is they're still going through and how they're still dealing with such loss. So tonight we just want to get into that and really deal with the topic as a whole. And so I want to first invite Tanessa and Garnet, but I want to invite Tanessa to share, what her experience was, just to give us a background of what happened, and she can share with us at this point in time. I'll turn over to Tanessa.
Okay, it is indeed a pleasure to be on tonight. Good night to everyone who is listening and everyone who is locked on. Firstly, let me thank you, Pastor Jason, and the Freeport Wesleyan Holiness Church for this initiative. As you have indicated, it is a very necessary, it is a difficult conversation, but it is a necessary conversation to have. So for all the persons who do not know me, I would start. My name is Tanessa Lawrence, and the gentleman sitting next to me has been my husband for the past 7 years and 10 months, 11 months. We will celebrate our anniversary in December. Yeah. So my earliest memory of my husband, Garnet, is at 4. And I am asking you to trust me when I say all of this is going to connect to what happened. So my earliest memory of my husband is at 4. Garnet has always been a very constant part of my life. We were always very good friends. We grew up in the same church. We went to the same school. He was my prefect in school. We then worked at the same secondary school. And we always had very long and intense conversations when we were friends. And one of the conversations that we always had centered around children. So I always knew that Garnet wanted to have kids. And most importantly, I always knew that his first daughter was going to be called Cherub. Cherub is short for cherubim. And he explained to me at the age of 15 that the presence of God dwelt amongst the cherubim on the Ark of Covenant in the Old Testament. And it was a name that he loved. And so he always said that his first child, his first daughter, I should say, would be named Cherub. So fast forward 15 plus years when Garnet and I got married. And 1 year, 3 months into our marriage, we got married in 2012. So in March of 2014, we found out that we were pregnant with our first baby. And we were, of course, overjoyed. It was a wanted pregnancy. We were very, very happy. And if I have to be honest, because this is couch conversations, we saw that pregnancy as a reward from God because we had done everything right. We obeyed our parents. We lived the life that we were taught in church to live. We were virgins until we got married. We courted for 7+ years. We were not unequally yoked, and so this was our reward for living right. And so when we found out that we were pregnant, we were really, 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 really happy and ecstatic. I remember that when I told Garnet the news, when I took the test and I told him the news, the first thing that he did was to kneel down and pray. And he prayed, and I remember him praying and saying, God, we thank you for this blessing. This child is a blessing. So later on in the pregnancy, when we found out that we were having a girl, there was no doubt in our mind that she was going to be called Cherub, because that is something that he desired. And I like the name, and I like the symbolism behind the name. Our pregnancy was not complicated. I had no complications. I had no morning sickness. I did not vomit. The only thing that I could not eat is I did not like chicken, so I would laugh and say, my daughter is a vegetarian, she does not like meat. So I couldn't smell, especially barbecue chicken. And I never liked spicy foods, but I loved pepper during that pregnancy. And I loved mangoes. I used to eat a lot of mangoes. So I would say, Cherub likes mangoes and Cherub likes pepper, and she's a vegetarian. When we found out that we were pregnant, I was 1 month pregnant. So I knew very early. We knew very early, and a lot of things about our life changed. A lot of things about how we dealt with one another changed. Cherub became a very big part of our life. Whenever we were leaving the house, we would have a conversation with her. Okay, Cherub, so we're leaving the house now, and we are going to Scarborough, and we are going to do A or we're going to do B. Garnet spoke to her every night. I spoke to her every night. We prayed, we read the Bible with her and to her. And especially when we started to feel movement, when I started to feel movement, whenever her father spoke to her, she would kick a lot and she would move around a lot. And so she was a very real part of my life. There was no doubt that I was pregnant. So as I said, I had no complications. But sometime in or around July of 2014, I started to feel strange. There's no other word I could use. I started to feel, yes, strange. I always kept a log from the time I found out that I was pregnant. So I kept a log, and I would write everything that was going on. So I kept this log, and when I went to my doctors, I said, I'm feeling strange. And I remember the doctor at the time was an intern, and she said, what exactly are you feeling? And when I described it to her and she took my blood pressure, it was very high. I had never had high blood pressure in this pregnancy before, and my pregnancies after Cherub, high blood pressure has never been an issue. So I attributed it to the up and down, of life and going about and stuff like that. And I was given bed rest, sick leave. A week, I bought a high blood pressure machine. I tested my pressure, and everything regularized, and everything went back to normal, and I went back out to work. And when I went back out to work, the Thursday, I was in the hospital. And for me, that is where the beginning of the end started. So when I got to the hospital, I was under the impression, based on the information that I received, that I would stay on bed rest until the baby came. Because at that point in time, I was 24 going on to 25 weeks into my pregnancy. So for persons who don't understand the terminology, that is a little over 5.5 months. So I was told, well, I would have to sit easy, sit tight until the baby came, which I interpreted to mean full term. Cherub was due on my birthday, around that, well, yes, on my birthday. So I made up my mind that I would be in the hospital until then, and I became, I made myself comfortable. So fast forward, and I think this is very important to my story. I did not know that this was going to happen. And I did not know when I thought about why to prepare for this conversation. When I got married, I got married at 26. I turned 26 the week before my wedding day. At that point in time, and up until the time of becoming pregnant, all I knew about pregnancy was three things. One, it is sometimes very difficult to get pregnant. Two, that when you get pregnant, you have to be very careful for the first 3 months. But once you make it through the first trimester, all is well. That is what I knew. And three, your next hurdle after the first 3 months is labor. And but between your 3 months and labor, all is well and all is fine. So after I crossed 3 months, my first trimester, in my mind, all was well, everything was fine. And as I said, I had no complications. So we started to buy clothes because we knew it was a girl. That was confirmed. So I had clothes for her. I had a lot of different things that I purchased, in the interest of time. So I had already started to shop for her. And as I said, she was already a very big part of our lives. And so when I got to the hospital and they said to me, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is the medical plan. I was, of course, on board with the plan because whatever needed to be done so that my daughter would live and that she would survive, that is what would need to be done. So I got to the hospital on Thursday, and then on Saturday, which was 48 hours after, I went into what I now know is labor. I did not know that I was in labor. I would go as far as to say I wasn't told that I was in labor. And the way that I was treated, I could not believe at the end of the day that I was in labor. Because none of the treatment, now that I've had kids after, none of the treatment that I received triggered in my mind that this is what was happening. And for me, that is one of the things that caused this experience to be so difficult for me, because the type of person that I am, I need information. And if I have information, I could process and I could deal with it. So I went into labor and I delivered my daughter. I delivered her alone. I was not surrounded by anybody. I did not have any help, unfortunately. And I delivered her alone. And I delivered her on my bed, on the ward at the hospital. And I saw her, and I saw her breathe, and I saw her die. And then everybody came in. And I would say that the first emotion that I felt, of course, was shock. I remember saying to the doctor, what is happening? My body went into shock, and I started to shake violently. And I said, what is happening? What is happening? What is happening? Because I was seeing the baby, but I was like, what is going on? What is happening? What is happening? What is happening? And I remember a nurse said, well, it's over now. And she said you could go and bathe and stuff like that. And I won't get into the gory details. But essentially, my daughter was born on that Saturday and she died. She did not live for long, but she lived. And I saw her die. And then I was discharged a day after. Upon discharge, I had to ask for sick leave, and I was given, I think, 3 days, if so much. And I am saying all of this to say that for me, my experience, all of these things contributed towards how I dealt with life after infant loss, because all of these things contributed to my shock. I was in shock. My brain and my body did not compute what was taking place. And based on how I was treated, in terms of how the things that were said to me, I felt like nothing happened. I honestly was like, okay, so nothing happened. I remember asking the nurse, I said, okay, so the baby is okay, right? The baby is fine. And she watched me. And she didn't answer. But I was like, yeah, I'm seeing what is there. But my baby's in my stomach still. I'm fine. Everything is okay. We're going until the end of term and whatnot. So when I got discharged, a very long story short. So I got discharged and I went home. So shock for me ended when on the Tuesday after I got discharged. So I got discharged on a Sunday, and shock for me ended when I was lying down. Garnet left me and I was lying down. And I started to feel this liquid, and I said, what is this? What is this? What is this? And again, my brain and my body couldn't compute. And then I realized that I don't know if you could say breast in church, Pastor, but I have to say it. But my breasts were leaking. And I said, I don't understand what is going on. And then I realized I got milk. My milk came in because I wasn't given medication to stop the milk. Because, again, the treatment said nothing was happening, right? Nothing happened. That is how I left the hospital feeling. Nothing happened. There is no issue. There is no problem. You could go back out to work on Monday if you want, even though you just went through this on Saturday. It is all well. It is all fine. Nothing happened. So when I saw the milk, that is when shock ended and reality hit, which was 3 days later. And I remember picking up the phone. And I remember calling my mother, and all I could say to her was, Mommy. Well, I would say Mommy because we are on a platform with international persons, and I don't know if people understand my twang. But for Tobagonians, I said, Mommy. Right? So I said, Mommy. And she said, I am coming. I knew later, she told me after she was in the bank line, but my mother came. And that is when reality hit, because she put me sit down and she said to me, welcome to motherhood. Welcome to motherhood. I would like you to know that you are a mother. The difference between you and what you were expecting is that your child did not come home, but you are a mother. And I need you to understand that everything that happens after you have a child is going to happen to you. So your milk is going to come. You had a vaginal delivery. You would have to sit down over the hot water. You would have to drink the bush. In Tobago, you would have to drink whatever.
Drink the bush.
You would have to drink the bush. You would have to do everything. And I have to say, that was devastating for me. Because after I had my other two children, I understood why. Recovery after pregnancy is very hard. But when you have a child in your hand, it is easier. So imagine feeling the pain of engorged breast, and imagine, the pain that you feel after vaginal delivery, and imagine being told you can't go here and you can't do there. You have to cater for lime and coal, and you have to this, and your life has to change, but you have no baby in your hand. So after shock, the next emotion that I felt for a very long time after was shame. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. And that, I think, is what put me into depression. I was on my floor for 6 months. My husband would leave, and he would leave me on the floor listening to Kirk Franklin's Everyone Hurts, a song that he hates now, with a passion. It would be on repeat, and I would roll on that ground and bawl for the entire day. He would come back and he would meet me in the same position. Sometimes he would come on the floor with me. Sometimes he would say, let's go for a drive, and I didn't want to go because I was so embarrassed. And I remember one time when he got me to go out of the house, when we got to the place, somebody who knew that I was pregnant said, hey, what baby you get? And the earth could have opened up and swallowed me because I was so embarrassed. And the embarrassment came a lot because I felt very strongly that I killed my husband's child. This is the child that this man was waiting for since he was 15. People didn't find he should have get married to me in the first place. We're having couch conversations. Let me keep it real, right? He wasn't supposed to marry me in the first place. I was not.
That's a different conversation, though. We
Yes, that's a different conversation. But all of this factored in. He wasn't supposed to marry me. This is the child that he longed for, he dreamed for, he named this child since he's 15. And I had one job. So I say I had one job, one work. And you killed this man's child. And so the shame that hit me caused me to draft my own petition and present it to him for divorce. The shame caused me to roll on the ground for months. The shame caused me to, feel that I needed to exit. And we not went into that conversation, I don't know, but to exit this world and stuff like that. And after shame, the next big emotion that hit me was stuck. I felt stuck because I felt that the world continued to spin, but I did not move past July 2014. So here we are in October 2014, but I am in July of 2014. And Janet is out back to work and he's going about his life. And I would ask him all the time, how you could go to work? How is it that you could go to work? I could not bring myself to go to work. I couldn't bring myself to go to church. I couldn't bring myself to do anything because I was so stuck and I did not know how to get out of that. And I didn't know how to move forward from that because I wanted everything to just stop. I wanted the earth to stop and acknowledge that I had a child and that she died. But everything kept going. Everything kept going. Everything kept going. And after I came out of stock, and I promise I'm almost done, Pastor J, to allow Nikki. After I came out of stock, I was seething, which is my word for anger. I grew up in church. I was born and raised in the church. You can't talk to me about church. And for me, as I said, I did everything right. I got saved. I was a worship leader. I was in a youth group. I gave God everything. I asked God who to marry. I made sure we were not unequal. I wasn't unequally youth. I sought advice and listened to advice. I went to school and I studied hard. I was obedient to my parents. I did everything right. And God, this is what you do to me? Like seriously, this is you are all powerful, all knowledgeable, all knowing. You know this was going to happen. You make me get pregnant to kill my child. I had those conversations with God. And I was angry. So at a point in time, Janet would say, you pray today for what? That was my response. For what? What praying for? What telling God? Good, dear Jesus, thank you for killing my child. And he would be like, oh my God. No, that is how I felt. You could have saved her because she lived. She took a breath. And you are the God who breathed breath into dust. You are the God who formed man from dirt. She was alive. You could have breathed into her and you could have caused her to live, but you let her die. And I don't understand, God, and we need to have a conversation about this because you did this to me. So I went through that for a very long time, the anger. And after the anger came submission. It didn't come easy. The same feeling of, okay, God is in control. It took me a very long time to get there. God is in control. God, you know what you're doing. It is that I say, I trust you. I trust you. If it is that I say that you are in control, you are in control. You see the beginning from the end. You understand things that I don't understand. You see things that I don't see. Maybe if I'd gone to full term, I would have died. Maybe if she had lived, there would have been complications. God, you saw things that I did not see. And so I now have to trust that you are God. And that did not come easy. As I said, I was depressed and on my floor for 6 months. And even after these 6 months, a lot of things happened that re-triggered and trigger. And it took me a long, long time to get to that point. And the last thing I would like to say before I hand over is, of course, we got pregnant again. And I now have 2 wonderful and beautiful children. But I would be lying if I say that when I got pregnant the second time with my daughter now, Soraya, the battle was real. The fear was real. The anxiety was real. The concern was real. The fear of loving her was real. There are a lot of things that I did not do with Soraya because I did it with Cherub, and Cherub died. So for the first 28 weeks, because I was told we need to get her to 28 weeks, I did not communicate with her, as in talk to her in the belly, which is something I did with Cherub. I tried my hardest. I did not get attached to her because in my mind, I have to prepare myself, and the pain that I felt after I lost Cherub, I could not go through that pain again. It was almost maddening. And to preserve my mental health, I decided that I was not going to. And so for me, bonding with Soraya after was very difficult because I was not connected to her in the womb. I did experience postpartum depression when I had Soraya. It was real because we did not have that bond in the womb. And so when she was born, I felt like I didn't know who she was. And it was difficult for me to understand or to accept that she's alive. I kept waiting for something to happen. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop because now I had the knowledge and I had the information that things like this could happen. And that was a very, very real struggle for me. And that was one of the biggest things that I think I had to deal with after the loss of Cherub. And I'll stop there for now. I apologize, Pastor. I hope I didn't go too long.
No problem. So
more things will come out during the question and answer.
Correct. We plan to go through some more things. And for those of y'all who may not know, this is the first time, and I really want to thank her for opening up. This is the first time that Tanessa is actually opening up and sharing her story, and I really want to thank her for doing that tonight so that they could really encourage and help other persons as well. And so we have Nakisha, who is going to share her story at this point in time, and then we're going to deal with some of the harder parts of it and some of the triggers. We're going to do with that a little later on. We're going to allow Nakisha to give her background as well.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Tanessa, I feel your pain because a lot of the things that you said I've been through. We were 27 weeks pregnant along. I went to work the night before. I worked the night shift at that time, and I went to work the night before. And I was saying to one of my co-workers, I'm like, oh, this baby's really moving tonight. That's what I was saying because I was thinking, oh my gosh. We had a doctor's appointment. That was the Tuesday. We had a doctor appointment on the Wednesday. So Worrell and Worrell never missed any of our appointments. We had just moved. Let me give you some background. We had just moved from Dallas to Fort Worth into our first home. And we told God when we got married, we want to have 2 years to enjoy ourselves, to get to know each other, that kind of thing. Like Tanessa, I waited. I did everything right. My husband was the first boyfriend I ever had. A lot of people were shocked when I was getting married. Oh my God, you getting married, really? A lot of people were shocked when I was getting married. So I did everything right too. And so when we moved, it was April, and July would have been 2 years since we got married. And I keep telling my husband, I'm like, I'm so tired. And he was like, yeah, because you did everything, you were packing, we just moved. So that's probably why you were tired. But the tired was like a fatigue. Like most of you who are pregnant know that when you're tired and you want to sleep when you're pregnant, you just have to go to sleep. You can't get away from it. Just go to sleep. Everybody's life will be better. Trust me. And when I found, so eventually I was talking to one of my spiritual mom, and I said, I feel this way. She's looking at me and she's smiling. I'm like, why are you smiling? I tell you, I'm tired. She like, did you take a pregnancy test? And I'm like, oh, it didn't dawn on me. I wasn't really thinking about pregnancy at that time. So lo and behold, I took the pregnancy test and we were pregnant. We were probably about 4 or 5 weeks. So I didn't really have any complication, no morning sickness, just like Tanessa, no, nothing like that. And eventually when we got to the doctors, this doctor's office was a rotating office. So if there are 5 doctors, you have to see them. And I really didn't enjoy that because I just wanted to have that experience where you go to the doctor, you share all these different things. So I didn't have that. For me, I was telling my husband, I'm like, I don't think I really like this. But we continued anyway because it was an office that we knew one of the doctors. And so we continue. So continuing the story. So I took the test. I found out, and well, everybody was excited because that was the first grandchild on both of my parents' side. You know, so I mean, I was already in my 30s when I got married. I was 30, so by that time I was 32 years old, and we were excited, like ecstatic, excited. Like I went through all the different emotions because I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with this baby? What am I going to do with this human? You know, I went through all of that, and we had gone to the doctor one time and the doctor said, have you did all the tests because they ask you to do all these required tests? I'm like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to just skip that. And I remember one particular day we went to the doctor. She's like, I really need to take a blood test from you because I'm seeing some abnormalities. And I said, okay. So we took the test and the doctor was like, okay, well, there wasn't really anything that we should be concerned about, but we're just going to continue to monitor you. So moving forward, we went to our doctors. Different things were happening, all kind of different things, and we just prayed. We are people of faith, so we did what we knew to do. We prayed, God, this is the situation, and we're giving it into your hands because this is the child that you have given us. That's 2 years, about 3 or 4 years before that, or 2 years before that, I was in the restroom at my parents' house, and God said, my spiritual parents' house, and God said, you're going to have a baby. And I found it was funny because I wasn't married, I wasn't courting, I wasn't dating anybody. I was like, what do you mean I'm going to have a baby? Like, what are you talking about, God? And he's like, yeah, you're going to have a baby and it's going to be a little girl and her name is going to be Abigail. And I was like, okay. And I smiled like Sarah. I was like, that's funny, God. You really have a sense of humor. I thought it was the funniest thing. So I went and did what I needed to do, and I forgot about it. Moving forward, and I start calling. I didn't even tell him about it because I forgot. So during the pregnancy, when we went to find out the birth, the gender of the baby, I remember the conversation that God and I was having, and I said, Warren, you know, some years ago, God told me this and whatever. So when we found out that we were having a daughter, it was natural for us to go ahead and say, okay, we have an Abigail. So we started to talk to her. Hi, Abigail. This is your mom. This is your dad. We spoke to her from the beginning, but we didn't have a name until we found out what gender she was. And so you get used to having this thing going inside of you, or the person going inside you, because it's not a thing, it's a person. This person going inside of you. And everybody knew I was extremely skinny. So the doctors were like, I'll keep asking the doctors, how come my stomach not getting big? And the doctor said, because I'm tall, that the baby was growing up, you know, because when you're short, you know, the baby, your belly get pushed out, or when you're tall, you know. So she was telling me, I said, okay, because this is our first experience. So I don't know what to expect. I don't know what to look for. I don't know, you know. So moving forward to that night that I told you I went to work, and I'm like, this baby is really moving. So I said, okay, when I go to the doctor tomorrow, we'll just, you know, find out. This is a really active baby, where if you know me, I'm active. I'm never sitting down, and I'm pregnant. I'm still going, still, you know, because I'm having a really good pregnancy. So we go to the doctor office on that Wednesday, and I'm laying there and I'm talking to Ward. He's sitting at my feet, and I'm talking to Ward, and I'm looking at the sonotech doing all the different stuff, and I'm looking at the emotions on his face, and I'm saying to Ward, something is wrong. And he's like, how do you know? I said, look at his face. So I said to him, I said, is everything okay? And he said, no. And I said, okay. Then he said, 1 minute, I'm going to call the doctor. So he stepped out to call the doctor, and I'm saying to Warren, something is wrong, because he's going to call the doctor. So the doctor come in, and he and the doctor is having the conversation, and they're talking and whatever. And then the doctor come over. She says, Mrs. Silver, she started like rubbing on my side, and she says, Mrs. Silver, I just want you all to know that we can't find a heartbeat. Well, boy, I don't know. I told Warren, I said, I think if I wasn't laying down, I would have collapsed. So I said, what do you mean? Like, I don't understand what you're saying right now. I'm getting really emotional and teary because I can remember. I said, I don't understand what you're talking about. Like, what do you mean you can't feel a heartbeat? And she said, we just want you to know that the baby died. And I was like, okay. But I felt the baby moving last night. What are you talking about? And she said, because the baby died and we don't know how long the baby died inside of you. It could just be like a bobbin of the baby just floating around because there's nothing. And she said, I just want you to change and I want you to come into my office because I need to talk to you guys. And they walked out and they left Warren and I alone. And I just wail, like that wail came from down in my stomach, like down in my, I mean, like wail. And my husband is just sitting there like with, I see that he's processing and he's like, he don't know what kind of emotion probably to have. So he's just holding me and I'm just wailing like I sure they cannot hear me from downstairs because I was wailing like that's the only way I could put it. Eventually he helped me put my clothes on. I think like 30 minutes after he helped me put my clothes on and we go into the doctor's office and the doctor, we were sitting just like this and the doctor was looking like how you were looking at us. And she said, you could try again. I believe that you could do. Unfortunately, there's nothing that we could tell you that have caused this. The baby died inside of you, and we don't know how long the baby died, so we would need to do emergency surgery. Oh my gosh, I went to the other gear. Tanessa talking about I went into the other gear. The other gear was denial for me. No, I'm not doing that. You're taking my baby away. I felt like I went into like insanity. Like I went to a different level. I don't know what happened. And I start shouting, no, I'm not doing that. No, why are you going to allow them to do this to me? And I'm saying this to my husband. You're going to allow them to do this to me? You're going to make them take my baby away? And I was shouting like that. And eventually the doctor was like, Nikisha, we're not trying to take the baby away. We're trying to protect you because we don't know how long this baby died inside of you. And this baby could poison you and you could die too. And I'm thinking, but I can't just give up this baby that was growing inside of me for so long. Like you're asking me to give up. Why do you want me to give this up? I'm saying this to the doctor. Why do you want me to give this up? And Warren's like, Nikisha, you have to understand. He's trying to explain what the doctor is explaining. I mean, it's not working. And I'm like, I don't want to hear anything. I don't want to do this. Eventually, the doctor was like, Nikisha, okay, let me tell you what we're going to do. I need you to take her home. She's telling Warren, I need you to take her home. And you really need to talk about this. And you really need to make an appointment because we really need to get a baby out of her. Because this is a life and death situation. The baby died and we don't want her to die too. She could always get pregnant again, but we don't want the two of them to die. So eventually Warren was like, okay, so we're driving out and Warren like, Nikisha, I don't know what else to say to you. At this point, I think he was getting frustrated because I'm like bawling like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not. And he said, I'm going to take you to Daystar. We worked at Daystar at the time. And he said, I'm going to take you. So he took me and one of my manager was there and he told her, they prayed over us and we, you know, they were like, Nikisha, you really need to make an appointment. We made the appointment. Eventually, we made that appointment. And I made the appointment for the next day, which was October the 19th. So this October was 9 years since we lost her. And it's been, the first couple of years was really, really hard. I remember when we went to the hospital, we made the appointment on that Wednesday. And I delivered her on a Thursday morning, right? We had to go in the morning for 6 o'clock in the morning because they had to induce labor because my body didn't recognize that I was in labor. So they had to induce labor. And I had to go through the whole process of laying there and all the different things. I didn't want to have an epidural, so I had her naturally and all the different things. And it was hard. I think I've been through so many different things and I have not met anything that I've been through like that baby walking through that stage. Yeah, that was a hurt that I have. I don't even know how to explain, to express, I don't know even the words to put into to tell you how I felt or how I after that time. I went in and started to induce labor at 6 a.m. and the baby never came until 5:44 that afternoon. And as I said, I had her stillbirth. I didn't have a long labor. I just pushed, baby came out. They went and they cleaned her up and they brought her back to us. She was really, really tiny. She wasn't even 1 pound. So we knew that something was wrong with her growth. She already had the looks of, we knew what she was going to look like. My family have a tag on our finger. She had the tags. All my children have them. The tags on the finger, we already, I mean, she was really, really tiny because Warren wedding ring could have fit on her hands and it looked like a bracelet. That's how small she was. And they brought her back to us and we get to spend some time with her. And then they took her and that was it. That night, it was like surreal. I don't think I even slept that night. It was like, okay, God, what is happening here? And like Tennis, I said, God, I did everything right. I lived in Laventille. I grew up in Laventille. And everybody in here from Trinidad know Laventille. When you hear Laventille, you have a perception of what people would be. And for God to preserve me and take me out of Laventille at 18 years old, I accepted Jesus and walked with him until I'm still walking with him. And for this to happen, I felt betrayed. I felt like, God, I'm looking at all these celebrities who are having kids out of wedlock, doing all these different. That's how I felt, like Tanessa. I don't want to hear nobody coming and tell me no scripture because I could quote some scriptures. If you go to the Wesleyan Holiness Church, you better know some scriptures. I knew. I knew it all. My husband and I were ordained ministers, so we knew the word and we walked with God. We did everything right. We got, So I was angry. I was like, God, what is this? I don't understand this. And for me, I think the easiest part was delivering. But I remember that Thursday, I went in on the Thursday and I came home. I think they kept me like a day.
We came home. I think we came home that same evening.
We came home the next day, the Friday. And when they were wheeling me out of the war, out of that compound, it was a women's hospital. And I'm telling you, when they were wheeling me out and I saw all those women walking with that baby, with their babies, oh my God, that was a different kind of emotion because I said, God, I came here and delivered something and I came with something and I'm leaving with nothing. Like, I don't have anything to show for what I've just been through. I just have all these emotions. I'm all over the place. I don't know what is going on right now. And I'm talking to God and he's not talking back to me. And that gets me more angry because I'm like, oh, no, you don't want to talk, Warren being he was so patient in this time. And I was like, how you doing? Because I can't imagine, you going through this with me because most of the times he was always there. I remember when he had to go back to work because he had a couple of days off. He was like, I was home alone and he was like, you sure you're going to be okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be okay. He would call me. I'm like, I'm going to be okay. He was calling every hour on the hour. I want to make sure that you're okay because mentally, I don't think I was doing as good as I thought I was, And I said all of this to say, the doctor said to us, you all could do this again. I didn't feel like I wanted to do that again. I didn't feel like I wanted to go through that again. It's been a time where I'm like, God, I don't understand. Talk to me. Tell me what's going on here, and God have really, really been God, who he said he was, because I remember my spiritual dad coming to the house to see me. That's James Adney. For most of y'all know who James and Lisa J. Kind of adopted me when I came here because I didn't have anybody here beside them. And he came to the house that weekend and he said, I just came to make sure that you were okay. God surrounded me with people who prayed for me, who loved on me, who made sure I was okay. The church that we were going through at that time was very supportive. We always had somebody there, but it was so dark. You could feel the depression in our house, after we came home. And he came to the house and I said, we called him, Papa, I don't understand. Could you explain to me? This is what God said. He told me that I was going to have a baby. He told me this. Did I miss him? Did I just made this up? What happened? And he said, you did hear what God said. And he did speak to you. And he said, I can't explain to you and tell you what happened or why the baby died. But I could tell you that you could do something in honor of her that would make her live on and make her do other things and do things that, that she would necessarily not been able to do if she was here. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you could have a ministry, you could have an initiative, you could do something in her name. And that's what we did. That's why we have the Abigail Initiative. The Abigail Initiative is our daughter that we love, has 27 weeks. She have done a lot of things that most people haven't done. In the last 6 months during the COVID, we were able to go to 11 different countries and give food and finances for people to do the same thing that we do here in Texas. You all see what we do, feeding and clothing and doing all that kind of stuff. We were supposed to be on some mission trip this year because of COVID. We didn't get to go and do those things. But we are a ministry family. I have 2 other daughters beside that. Abigail was our first. We have Mariah, who is 7, and we have Makaria, who is now 4. And luckily for us, we got pregnant, I think like 4 to 6 months after we had Abigail. So we had her right. We had Mariah like at least a year and a half after her. I mean, counting the pregnancy and all that. I had very good pregnancies after that. The doctor said is one in, I think they said one in 116 women have stillbirth, and every 16 seconds somebody have a stillbirth around the world. So it is real. And I want to say to Tanessa, those are real emotions. You know, nobody can take that away from you. Nobody could tell you what you felt. Nobody could tell you that what you were carrying wasn't a child. It was a child. It was a part of you and Garnet. And you could do something too that her name would live on, that you would be able to look up and say, Cheryl, we see you, you know. I hope she and Abigail is having some fun up there right now, you know. But I just want to say this is a real conversation that we need to have, because I think a lot of I was angry too, because a lot of women came out and said, I went through that. You know, people didn't talk about it. Even my mom had a miscarriage before she had me because I'm the firstborn. But I never knew that until I had my stillbirth. Then we found out that Warren mom had a miscarriage. So people don't talk about this. This is some of these things are generational. Some of these things that happen to us are not things that we cause, but things that happen, or things that the enemy want to tag along in our family line. And we need to be aware of that. Another thing that I wanted to be aware of is my words. I remember as a young girl, I used to always say, I don't want to get married and I don't want to have children. We have to be careful what we say, you know. We really, I just want to encourage somebody today. You know, it is real, but there's life after that. We can't live there, but you can't tell people to get over it either, because grieving is a process. You know, and the way that I grieve, Warren didn't grieve that way, and I couldn't force him to grieve the way that I grieve. You know, so we have to just be patient with people and just love on people. Sometimes all you need to do is just go and lie down on the ground and cry with them, like Garnet did. Because sometimes you just don't know what to say, you know, and sometimes it's better that you don't say anything than you say something at all. I mean, people said all kind of stuff. One guy told me one day, well, you all didn't have enough faith to believe. You know, if you had faith to believe, then the baby wouldn't die. People say stupid stuff, you know, and I was like, okay. And I walked away because, I had to walk away, you know, and there was a lot of...
I want you to pause there, because I want us to, dive into that a little later about some of those challenges. So, anything else you want?
That's basically...
Okay, so let me just go across to Nicole before we go across to the men. They would have been talking about different stages that they would have had to deal with this loss. Just tell us a little bit in terms of the type of stages people go through, and clearly we see with even though they went through different stages, they may have gone through all these stages, but at different times they didn't actually start in an order. Sometimes people think you have to go in an order. So just share about that first for a little bit, please.
Firstly, I want to thank them really for sharing their stories, because I think it's really important that people understand it. And what I especially liked in their sharing was that they were able to identify their feelings, you know, and I was very quickly writing them down, feelings of shame and anger and shock and fear and not fear, embarrassment and this surreal feeling, right? And all of that, we experience all of that like a yarn, a ball of yarn. We experience all those emotions at the same time. It's not like you can pull out one and say, I'm feeling this one right now. You know, it's not like that. Sometimes you don't even know what you're feeling because all of these emotions rushing through you at the same time. And it is important that, you know, we understand that these feelings are real, as they said, and as Pastor was talking about three different stages. You know, that first one, shock and denial, right? As a person that happened like that, can't believe it happening. And that's a real thing persons who do denial and shock, like they confuse, like refusal to accept that this is
Nicole,
really
you're
the
breaking up a
situation.
little bit. I don't know if you want to take off the headset,
Am
but
I?
you're breaking up a little bit.
Are you hearing me now?
Yeah, we're hearing you now.
Right. So refusal, that denial stage where you refuse to accept a situation, it is so overwhelming. You're in so much shock at what happened. You know, you go through that first stage. Sometimes it's first, but it's not the first because you can experience it at any time again, right? And then the anger. But normally we look at a certain parents who talks about anger after the denial, where you feel so angry about yourself. And Tanisha was talking about that. She was like, you can just carry this thing that you had one job to do and you can just do that, and you don't have the anger to yourself, anger towards God, as we heard from both couples. You might have even some people experience anger to their partners sometimes, right? And that's a very real feeling. And then sometimes you have the guilt, you know, and we saw that play out, the guilt that you couldn't carry this thing, the guilt of blaming yourself, like, why did this have to happen, you know? And then you have the depression, and depression is a very serious thing because when it goes on for too long, then you cannot deal with depression on your own. You really should get someone, a mental health professional, to come in and help you through that grief, and sometimes you even need a doctor to assist you with that guilt, right? To recommend medication sometimes, because that, not that guilt, the depression, because depression is very, very serious, right? And she had it for 6 months or so. She got identified for 6 months. So that feeling of helplessness, that you know, that you couldn't do it, that this thing happened and you couldn't help yourself, you know, it's a very real thing, realizing that the loss is final. You know, that is really a hard thing. And then sometimes you get to the acceptance, and usually when you get to the acceptance, you're trying to embrace the new reality, the new normal, as we say in these days. But you must remember, at any point in time, you can be slingshot right back into denial. I cannot believe this has happened to me. Right? At any point in time, you could be slinged back into anger. You could go back into guilt. You could go into the depression again. You know, so this thing is not like this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and people need to understand. But I thought you get over that anger already. No. At any point in time, you could go right back to any of the stages there at any point in time. And it is very important. She said, I like the way she said submission, Tanisha. She said submission. And that is the acceptance. She submitted herself, okay, well, I find, okay, I will accept it. But sometimes you reach there and at any point in time, you're all over the place with all the emotions fresh. And sometimes all it takes is one trigger. Somebody say something, you see a baby, you see a nurse in a uniform and it reminded the nurse who didn't do what she was supposed to do. You know, it could take any kind of a trigger to send you right back into your grief in a real way. The grief never leaves, you know, but you're coping, the strategies of coping with the grief helps you to improve as you go along. But to say that you're forever over it, that does not happen. Because you have the birthdays, the anniversaries, you know, you have landmarks that you're going to remember, your babies. So it is very important that persons out there understand that don't give them 6 months until they will get over. It doesn't happen like that. you know?
We want to go to the men at this point in time. You know, when when this type of loss happens, you know, everybody kind of thinks about the woman alone, and they forget to realize that the men go through this loss as well. And as Tanessa and even Nikki was saying, they go through it and experience it in a different way, because I know it may be challenging for them because they have to be strong for the woman as well, while still trying to deal with their loss. So I want to thank the men for taking the time to be here with us this evening as well. And we just want to ask, I was going to start with Janet, but I see he just went out to probably take the kids and come back. So, Warren, could you just share for us, you know, what was your experience like?
Okay, thank you once again, Pastor Jason, and thank you, Mrs. Lawrence and your husband, for sharing your story. There's so much similarities with ours. Not that it would not have been the same if it was a boy, but you guys had Cherub, we had Abigail, and just that same, you know, it's the same kind of the emotions. Well, for me, it's I believe that God just had me at that place at that time to be there for Nikisha. In the moment when everything happened, as a matter of fact, I mean, it's so much things that happen with the whole situation, because what Nikki happened, I want to just kind of just add this, that we had changed doctors. We changed because there was the ones that were going to at first, they had instructed us to do this blood test. After we did the blood test, then they said that they noticed that the baby could be born with Down syndrome. At the time when I was like, man, God, this is, I was saying to God, I said, Lord, I mean, we want to have to know if we are in a position to really handle or deal with a situation with a child with a special need. That was situation number one. So I remember I was praying. At the time we were moved to the new house, and I remember one day I went to go get my car fixed, and I sat there and I talked to God, and I said, you know what, that just help us. And so that happened. They told us that they want to go to a specialist at an IT to do a amniocentesis to go. We were told by one of the doctor, that just that invasive kind of thing can also affect the birth and everything and stuff. We got there. There was this one counselor talking a mile a minute, telling us all kind of stuff. Nikki crying. It was just a lot of confusion, a lot of stuff going on. We went to see the doctor. The lady we went there to see was somebody else that also was a lot of stuff. The long and short of it is that they're telling us at that time that the size of the age of the baby didn't match the size of the baby. And once again, I give God thanks for the community, because we had people who were praying for us. I remember, there was one day driving to work at that time, and I remember I was talking to same just Ajay, and the baby was there at the time, and he said, well, this was what he said to me. He said, if you have to choose between your wife and your baby, I'm going to ask you to choose your wife, because you can always have another child. All this time, everything was going hunky-dory. Everything would look right. And we went for that second opinion that day. I remember I was sitting in the waiting room, and the Holy Spirit spoke to me. When I went to the second doctor, he really spoke to me, and he said, everything's going to be all right. And maybe I needed to hear that at that moment in order for me to be strong. But him telling me that everything's going to be all right,
Well,
I didn't assume, I didn't know it was going to be.
Breaking up a bit. Unfortunately,
I'm breaking up.
You're breaking up a lot, yeah. So I think we may have missed the last couple of minutes because it started to break up. We hear Nikki clear before, but I don't know what's happening on this side. When these things happen, I always say it's the enemy trying to come against the stream, because because look, you're talking now, I'm actually hearing you, so I don't know what's happening just now. So
so I'll slow down and I'll try to measure my So what was the last thing you heard?
Slow down.
The truth is, you've been breaking up for a little bit, but we were trying to verify if it was from our
Okay.
side.
Okay.
So we heard bits and pieces. I remember you said your
Okay.
son that believe it was his spiritual father in terms of choosing between the baby and your
Yes.
wife. So you could probably start from there.
Okay. So there was a day when Nikki was still pregnant with the baby, and we were driving to work because we were both working at the same company doing the same shift. And he prayed for us, and he said, "Listen, if you have to choose between the baby and your wife, I suggest you choose your wife because you guys can get pregnant again. You're young and you can have kids again, right?" The day that we gone to the second doctor to get a second opinion, I remember I was in the waiting room, and I felt I really think I heard from the Lord, and He said everything's going to be all right. And when we learned that the baby passed away, in that particular moment, I just know that there was a grace, there was this peace upon me that it's just inexplicable. There were moments, maybe because I had lost in the past before, I had lost my mom and my sister. It's not the same thing, but there was a grace, there was a peace, and the only scripture that I can use to actually help me to navigate that particular emotion or that situation was the scripture that I talked about, and the peace of God which surpasses all understanding will guard your heart and mind. So for that season, while Nikki's going through all the different emotions, there was some strength for me. But honestly, my time of mourning happened about maybe last baby in October. It was about January, February. One day I was at work and I was sitting at the computer, and I just don't know why. I wasn't even thinking about the fact that we lost a baby. I just started to cry. I cried for good
Well,
2, 3,
I'm sorry
maybe
to
2
sorry to
hours.
interrupt, but it is I don't know why it's started back to break up again. So what we do, let's go across to Ghana just for a little bit, and let's
All right.
trust God that your internet things will sort out. And we're gonna ask Ghana to share at this point in time. I will just come back to you because I want to make sure everybody
Okay.
can hear what you're saying. So Ghana.
Okay. All right.
All right. Hello everybody. Yeah. So what am I supposed to say again? My experience. As Tanessa said, I named my first daughter Cherub from the age of 15. It's a kind of slightly funny story. Was going to our classes in Compre and saw this car, and the car had Cherub on it. And I said, this is a beautiful name. I'm going to name my daughter this, my first daughter this. And of course, because I knew the scriptures that the cherubims were above the Ark of Covenant. And so we got married. I chose her, still choose her. And when we got pregnant, and I'm being honest, I think Cherub got the best of us for our pregnancy. It was hard with Soraya because we had several complications, plus the history. And with Judah, well, Judah's a champion. We always had Cherokee is a champion. But Cherub got the best out of us. When I found out, I prayed, I was excited, we were happy. I never heard a story about someone losing a child. It never entered my stratosphere. So when it is that we had passed the first trimester, they say usually then you have to be worried about, okay, fine, that had passed. So when it is on that Thursday night, she came and she said, okay, something is wrong. I have did A-level biology. So when she said certain things and I saw certain things, I knew in my spirit something was going to happen. And I think that's what defines the experience between the two of us. when we went to the hospital, the doctors would say, there's a possibility that something can happen and the child can live, and we will do as much as we can to make sure. But I knew for myself and from how I looked at their faces what was going to happen. No, let me rephrase that. I didn't know. Because I did not know what losing a child meant. I didn't know what losing a child felt. I didn't understand. But from a scientific, logical perspective, I understood that something biologically was off here, and the result could mean losing a child or losing the child. So when we went up to the hospital and the doctors spoke, they spoke to her and then they spoke to me. And what they would tell her was, let's see what we can do. And then what they came and told me was, this situation, water, mud, and flour, there's a chance that this is going to happen. Because I guess I understood biologically what was happening. So they could explain it to me and I could do a clinical understanding of it. So I remember the Saturday, which was the last time I saw her pregnant. I left at 4. We had several people come in. People came in and they prayed and they declared that this is going to go full term. And I began to feel guilty because in my mind, I am saying the biology says this. And we are saying and believing it should not be this. Because when things like this happen, as believers, we believe a miracle is going to take place. Our minds, our beliefs, our growing up tells us that when believers encounter a situation like this, where the doctors say no, that Jesus says yes. Now, to put a caveat on that, Sariah is a miracle baby, and Judah is the power of God. So God came back in the lives of our 2 children and proved that he is able to keep and he is able to save. We almost lost Sariah, which was a whole next traumatic experience by itself. Went by the doctor for ultrasound. Also, a lady like, how Nikki, how you were when it is that you watch the person and they were like, something's wrong. So we were there like, no, take the baby and thing. And the lady who was doing it, we became, we're open people, so we became talking and lining and like us, and then her face turned, and we saw, and we were like, okay, what's going on here? And she was like, okay, let's keep it for a moment, and step out for half an hour. And it was half hour to us. It was 2 hours, yeah, they left us in there for a while. Months later, after we had delivered that kind of story, the doctor came and he told us they were outside there, sitting in the room trying to figure out how they're going to tell us our child was dying. That's not our first one, the second baby. They didn't know how they were going to tell us our child was dying. But that's a different story. So when I left, there was some measure of guilt. There was some measure of, and I should be careful of saying this because it wasn't that we knew that Saturday night into Sunday morning, she would deliver the baby. We did not know what would happen. And doctors were like, let's wait and see what would happen. In their minds, they felt it was a matter of time before this happens. How long that time may take place, we don't know. So we were waiting. If we got to 6 months, which was 2 weeks away, everything would have been fine. They made it clear that they weren't willing to, so we were prepared for waiting. But I was also in my mind biologically saying, this is not going to work out. And again, I didn't understand what that means. So when she called me Sunday morning and told me what happened, bawling on the phone, I went into protective mode. You are a husband, and so you understand that the sanity and the reputation, and maybe for some people they can't appreciate that, but the sanity that is inside and the reputation, public, of your wife has to be protected. And so I went into that zone of okay. And the first thought that I had in my head, and I have never done a test, I could attest it, I have never done, I never got angry and say, you did something wrong. Because I understood, even if that thought, and not that the thought entered, but I knew when you get vulnerable and you get hurt and you get angry and you begin to look for someone to blame in this situation, that you may want to look towards her. Because ultimately, she's the wife, she's the woman, she's the mother. I immediately understood God be glory, he gives and he takes away. And I understood if I had to stay married and it wasn't even a matter of me staying married because I would not divorce her. But as she said, I knew her enough to know if I made that mistake at some point in time and broke and said something stupid like that, my marriage would have been over because those words would have never been able to be erased from her mind. So I immediately accepted there were things that I could not do, I could not say. And so I went into protection mode. And I came, and we were talking last night about it, that I preached this very Sunday after. And my wife was upset because she said in her mind, I don't need to be there, I need time. She was not ready. But men and women, we do things and we see the view and we feel things differently. I needed to say something. I need to send it to my church because some of the, and we were discussing it last night, I don't know how much of the ugly was stopped because I said something. And if a different ugly came as a result of what I said, I can't say. But I had to make a public statement that my God knows what he was doing in this circumstance and in this situation. I preached, and the irony was I preached about breast milk. And that was before we had the breast milk episode. I preached about breast milk and the idea when Paul says, desire the sincere milk of the word. Because, I mean, my wife is not the emotional one, but I did the biology. So I was studying different kinds of milk and all that kind of story because we were preparing for it. And that's the thing about it. I don't care what nobody says. When you get pregnant, your body goes into pregnancy, you become a mother at that point in time. Everything about you changes. When you as a man, your wife becomes pregnant, your other becomes pregnant for you. Well, if it's not for you, then that's a different kettle of fish and a whole different thing because you can't verify. But if you can verify that child is mine, I become a father, your thought processes change immediately. I'm going to become a father. And so I was preparing and I preached about how Paul said desire the sincere milk of the word. And the idea being that there are two types of milk. I remember this sermon up to now. Fore milk and hind milk. And fore milk is the watery milk that comes out in the front, but hind milk is the one that's full of fat and full of protein, the one that keeps you full. So when you're breastfeeding a child, you want them to get the hind milk, not the fore milk. If we just drink fore milk alone, they'll get hungry in a half an hour. When they drink the hind milk, they'll be full for longer. And I preach about the fact that when you desire this sincere milk, which milk are you drinking? Because when you see Christians faltering over certain kind of steps and certain kind of things happen. So when I preach that word, I did not preach that word from a position of emptiness. I preached that word having lost my first child, the child I named, the child I spoke to every single day from the time. And from the time she got pregnant, I got on my knees and I spoke to her from that moment. From that moment till I kissed and I touched her on her belly, I spoke to her every day. So, sorry. Sorry. So, I knew that this was God, and I had to release it into his hands in spite of. And when I came home, I knew I had to be there for her because she was on the floor. Literally, literally on the floor, like rolling, and I was. So maybe I couldn't grieve, and I didn't grieve because I had to be there for her. And what I did, I worked. I worked as a secondary school teacher, so I worked. And I threw myself into my work, and I threw myself into my productive life. But even in doing that, when you are a teacher and you listen to children coming and telling you stories about how their father, auntie, mother, uncle, partner, friend interfering with them, and the kind of hurt and trauma you go through, and you think to yourself, my child would have never had to worry about that. When you know I am a teacher, I have a form class, and for every year of my form class, a child got pregnant. First formers got pregnant, second formers got pregnant, third formers got pregnant, fourth formers got pregnant, fifth formers got pregnant, and my child died. So I began to get angry as a teacher, watching other people having children and being fine, and we did not. But I held on to the idea that God knows what God is doing, and I released that. And I held on to that, and I did my best to stand there for my wife in the situation and in public. Because I knew I had to protect me, I had to protect my marriage, I had to protect my family, and I had to protect her walk with Christ. And that meant when she got angry, I had to shut up. Because I realized I can't tell her about faith in God until she reached the point where she could hear it and accept it for herself. And even if I said it, she couldn't hear it. And she would get angry with me. I learned, shut up and just be. And let her cry and let her scream. And sometimes it was hard because the question that she would ask, and she'd be like, Garnet, why? Why did God take my child? Why, if God knew the child was going to die? And she would look at me and she'd be like, you are the person who knows them kind of thing here. Answer the question. Don't give me no Christian answer. Tell me what it is. Tell me. And I could not answer. And I did not answer. Because I knew that there was no right answer I could give. That answer had to come from God. And she had to find God for herself in that moment again. Yeah. And like I said, the story of Cherub led to the story of Sariah. The story of Sariah led to the story of Judah. When we were having Sariah, doctor said bed rest for 9 months. And every time we went by him, all he said was gloom and doom. So losing your first child and then having a doctor come and telling you that you could lose a child if you jump in the car and you drive and hit a pothole, the child will come out of your womb. If you turn up too fast, the child will come out of your womb. And they came up with it and said, listen, hear what? We will not live in fear anymore. And so the feelings of that we had to fight with Sariah came from Cherub. And she did not speak to her. And then I realized that I wasn't even speaking to her as much as well. And then when I said, you know what, we're going to fight, I got down on my knees and I spoke to my child and I said, hello, we're going to call you Hope. Part of the reason why we call her Hope was because the thing that having lost Cherub meant was that we were ready at any point. If the doctor said, the baby going to die, okay, fine, no problem. Because it happened, and we know it happens. But that was not supposed to be for Soraya. And if we did not believe for Soraya, Soraya wouldn't have come. And because we believed with Soraya, when we did with Judah, Judah was a different story by itself. And so every piece required the piece that went before. And every trial that we went through. And every trial that we went through, we had to overcome the one behind it in order to deal with the one in front of us. And so we had to deal with Cherub before we dealt with Soraya. We had to overcome the fears and the anger and have the faith to have Soraya, because even though we lost Cherub. And so for me, as the husband and the father, and I know men may have different responses, and I wouldn't speak for how other men felt, like other men did, but I was clear as to what I had to do to protect my wife and to preserve my marriage. I'm going to put another word, excuse me.
Yes.
I want to ask our world to go ahead and share now. Thanks, Gannett, for sharing.
Well,
Last thing we heard was Worrell saying that he was crying for 2 hours.
oh yes. So I was at work one day and I started to cry, and that was it. That was it. The only other thing that I remember that was an issue, whenever I see other people on social media with their kids, I would sometimes ask myself, ask the Lord, ask Nikita, why not us? But like brother Lauren said a while ago, God in his wisdom responded and answered, gave us our two, Mariah, which Mrs. Lauren, she's named after the Mariah in Tobago.
Yes, in Tobago, yes.
and then Macaria. Like your husband said though, the all of the events, they kind of tend to roll into each other, because when Mariah came, there was some amount of trepidation too, and stuff. But as I said before, God, He did it. He did it. So that's it. Yeah.
So the thing for me at this point in time is I smiled at yourself because we started to talk yesterday. We were just doing a test run for how things were going to go today. And then instead of spending 10 minutes, we spent about almost an hour and a half, or probably close to 2 hours, just having conversations about different things. And, watching the time, an hour and a half has passed already, and I was hoping to, stop after the hour and a half, but I feel like we've just started this conversation. Like, we've just started to dive into some things. So, because I'm sure persons have questions as well, that people may want to ask some questions to you guys, and there are different things that we'd want to deal with. I think I'd want to use wisdom. I think we definitely need to have a part 2, because there's so many other things we haven't dived into in terms of, I know we were speaking last night, and even as Warren alluded to, Nikki alluded to, somebody looked at them and said, well, they didn't have enough faith, and that's why it is the trial pass. And there's so many insensitive things that are said. And I mean, we haven't even talked about so you would have heard Garnet talk, and what you would not have realized in that story that Tanessa even shared yesterday, and that's a whole even different thing to start to begin to discuss. She was saying that, Garnet never got the opportunity to be able to see. And it had some further stories that I don't want to touch, because if we touch, I think we would spend another hour to 2 hours based on our conversations yesterday. So what I would do, think at least for tonight, intent and purposes, I just want to ask But just for you to close off in terms of at least we would have learned the experience, and this was a lot just to take in by itself. I mean, I'm not even sure if it is as a person, to be honest with you. I'm not even sure if I could take much more tonight in terms of all that was shared. So just the experience alone is something for people to understand. When people go through this type of loss, it is really a lot. And so I think I will hold back for us to dive into all the challenges and some of the triggers and all the different things we would have spoke about yesterday to really talk about it. Hopefully, if it is, we could try for it for next week, please God. But just in closing, just give us if a person's just watched just one time and they're unable to make it back for a second time, just and we'll have the opportunity next week as well. But just give us like from the couple's perspective, just give us a 2 minute close up of what would you tell other people who are going through this. We will deal with the what to tell other people what not to do. We'll deal with that next week, but just close off if somebody else is dealing with this. How
Um,
would you tell them?
well, I like steps. So what I would like to say, there is something that Janet said to me, and I would touch on it, Pastor Jason. For context, at the beginning, and I will go fast. At the beginning of our of my presentation, I would have said that Cherub is a child that Janet planned for since he was 15 years old, and a part of the grief that he had to deal with was the fact that when she was born, when she eventually came to Earth, Garnet never saw her. He was never allowed to come onto the hospital because of the rules that we have. So he never saw her. He never held her. I was able to take one photograph, and that is all we have. So he never met this child that he waited for since he was 15. And one thing that he said to me a lot during my time, for persons who are going through this, is he would say, Tanessa, there would come a day where you can speak about Cherub, where you can say her name, and you will not be decimated, you will not be destroyed, you will not feel as though all hope is gone and all hope is lost. And I never thought I would see that day. I could not contemplate that because for me, this was the end all and be all of all things. It was an all-consuming type of grief. And I would say to that person going through right now that there will come a day when you will be able to call your child's name and not feel like if you want the earth to open up. My second thing would be, it doesn't matter if you lost your baby at 1 month in the womb, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, full term. You are a mother. You are a mother. That is something that I was never taught, that I wasn't allowed to feel. And I will come in the part two. So Nikki spoke about what the person told her. Somebody said to my face, what is your problem? You are not a mother. Nothing can happen to you. What are you carrying on so for? On Mother's Day in church. And that was a year later. And that sent me back into depression. You know? So I would want to say to that person, sometimes we trivialize person's experiences and we say, because you were 1 month pregnant and you had a miscarriage, it don't mean nothing. Or sometimes because, you do not see the physical evidence of my child, that I should get over it. But I would like to say to that couple, as Nikki said to me last night, please accept our condolences for your loss. The loss of a child is not something that I would wish on my worst enemy. It is a really hard, deep pain, especially when it is a hard and a deep pain. And I would say to that person who is going through right now to accept my condolences on the loss of your child. You are a parent. You are a mother. As my mother said to me, I welcome you to the most beautiful relationship that I know, which is motherhood. Human relationship, I should say, which is motherhood. You are a mother, you are a father. It is really unfortunate that you have to deal with the pain of not having anything to show, but you are a mother and there is legitimacy in your story, and nobody should ever trivialize or downplay or diminish that. Take as much time as you need. I did not go for counseling, and that is something that as I said to Nicole, I'll have to call after because it's something that I need. But I was so, because of my experience, I did not want to go to somebody and have them. I couldn't mentally deal with another person telling me, what is your problem? Nothing didn't happen. And so I have been very guarded over the years in protecting the memory of my child, because I know she's real. I push her out. And in Tobago, we say, out of my belly she come. She is my firstborn child. And people see Soraya and they see Judah. And, everybody was excited about Soraya. And my firstborn child is Cherub. She's the one who made me a mother. She's the one who opened my womb. She's the one who I delivered. And if nobody else honors that, I will continuously honor her. So that is what I would want to say to them. Get the counseling, go and talk, and make sure. My last point is grieve well. I believe in grieving well. And what does that mean? Ensure that at the end of the process, you are a whole. I don't know if whole is the word, but you are a whole person. Make sure that you go through the process of grief and make sure that you grieve well. Take as much time as you need, but grieve properly. Grieve in a healthy manner that preserves your mental and your spiritual and your emotional self. I don't know if you have anything to say.
What I would say is two things. One, for the person who would have lost, and I say persons, I should say persons, because if there's a man in the relationship, he is also affected. And we have to keep in mind that some men can, based on their culturing, they may be very dismissive of it. But many men, in my experience, losing a child for a man is also an earth-shattering experience. It's just that the earth is different, the ground is different. So the experience is different and the reactions are different and manifest themselves in different ways. So one thing that I used to tell her, and I would say to everyone, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to have all the questions. You have a right to ask all the questions. You have a right to feel. The book of Job gives it to us clearly. Job said, I loathe the day that I was born, when he experiences loss. And so these are all okay things to have. And for some reason, as believers, we are told you should not feel this way. You shouldn't ask these questions, because if you ask these questions, you are committing a sin and that you are lacking faith. You don't know what God has done and what God is doing. You don't, and it is hurting. And if you don't know and it is hurting, God understands that you are hurting. And God understands that you don't know. And at some point in time, and this is probably where the maturity comes, as I told her, it's going to not hurt as much as it did the day before. And there may come a point in time when you could call her name and it will be fine. And you wouldn't have all the triggers. And you have to give yourself that time. And the second thing is, the friends of Job shut up. Shut up. That's simple. Just shut up. Come. Yes. Okay. Sit down and be there. Allow them to ask questions. Allow them to say how they feel. And shut up. Because you don't know either.
Yeah.
You don't. And I mean, we like to think we know and have a right spiritual response to it, but you don't know what God's plan is for this.
Yeah.
As with Nikki and her situation and what you spoke about, look how many lives have been changed as a result of this experience. So many people have gotten hope and gotten light and gotten nurture and gotten strength. And you had to go through this. So you can't tell her 9 years ago, well, okay, in a couple of years from now, you're going to have. You can't tell somebody that. Shut up. And just let them go through. Just sit down. Job and them friends did the best thing for the 7 days. Sit down and just shut up and just be. And honestly, the person who is grieving will come to the right conclusions in the right time.
Yes.
They will find it. They will come. Because at the end of the day, we love God. And we know how God has been in our lives. And we know, even though it is the valley of the shadow of death, we will fear no evil because
Oh, Jesus.
us.
Yeah.
Amen.
So what I want to do is I want to ask Nikisha and Warrell to hold for the next time as we've had these points. If you all would share in the part two to give couples, their experience. But even as Garnet was sharing, I think that's the thing. The Bible talks about being slow to speak and quick to listen, and sometimes we don't really exercise that verse. And I just want to say in closing, I really want to thank the couples for sharing. It is interesting that, the Lord really laid this upon my heart. And I called Nikki, and I'm just going to give you a quick background. I called Nikki and I said, I want you to share in this if it's possible. And he said, well, it's interesting because we lost Abigail 9 years ago, almost to the date. And then she said, do you know that it is infant and pregnancy loss? And I was like, wow, I didn't even know that. And even recently, I had forgotten about it. We had a couple in our church that dealt with loss. They had a miscarriage and they had to deal with that as well. And of course, nobody would know who the couple is, but of course, we still had to pray and the thing is, and we'll talk about that next week in terms of still having triggers and we were talking about different things and we really mentioned that next week. And I was saying that Teresa and I were really good friends growing up, and then kind of disconnect a bit, and then this year camp we started back to chat, and I think God just put everything together. And what I want to say is that it doesn't matter if it is, and understand me clearly when I'm saying this, it doesn't matter if it is you're a Christian or not, it is a person. And you have to make sure that you say and do the right things. And especially if you're a Christian, you should be guided by the Holy Spirit in terms of what to say and what not to say. But don't worry, and Patu will help you of some of the things that should be said and should not be said based on these couples' experiences. So again, thank you everybody for staying on. Again, to the couples and to Nicole, we really want to thank you for being here with us. And so next week, please God, we're going to continue this conversation, and we're really asking you all to come back because, again, there's so many things that we didn't start diving yet in terms of some of the triggers and some of the things people would have said that we really need to do better as people and also as the church. And these are the conversations we want to have. We really just want to have real and candid conversations and see where we as people, and especially Christians, could do better in terms of people who are dealing with these issues. So have a good night, everybody. I hope my panel can make it back next week as we continue this conversation and we really give some more tips to help people that may be dealing with this inside our churches and outside as well, even in our communities. Have a good night, everybody. Take care. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
All right.